I don't know what we can talk about in this nation without talking about white superiority, honestly.
Who defines the meaning of God also defines the relationship between economy and God.
African Americans spent $1.3 trillion last year, making us the 16th wealthiest nation in the world. Why have we not turned those riches into wealth to develop our community?
Peace, family. I hope everyone is doing well today, and I want to first just send out just peace and harmony for our beautiful family in Haiti, and I just hope that things can get better there quickly. So please just stay tuned. We may be, putting up some information for some type of place where you can donate money, because one thing that's very clear, we want to make sure that our folks in Haiti actually get the money and it doesn't go to some other place out and wherever. So tonight is, I got to figure out, in fact, I should have one of you guys in the chat give me another word besides excited. But it's like every time I sit down for Happy Talks, I'm excited. And each time it just gets higher and higher. My level of excitement gets higher and higher. So, but this is going to be fun because this is just like all women tonight. And we haven't had like an all women's panel like ever. So this is going to be really great. I'm going to give some shout outs to Michelle Jewell that's in the chat, Julie Rudder, Lee, DM. You guys are always holding us down and on the shoulders of giants. Thank you so much. Before we get started and bring on these lovely ladies, I want to first tell you guys it's very, or not tell, but I'm going to ask you guys to please go to hapifilm.com. Okay. And the reason why you need to go to hapifilm.com, there's a lot of stuff you can do there. But one of the most important things we need for you to do is go and get connected and get and sign up for the newsletter. So we send out a lot of really interesting articles in the newsletter, but we also, are having some different savings for people who are actually subscribed to the newsletter. And so it's very important for you to just go to hapifilm.com, hit get connected, and put in your email address. Now, when you actually get the newsletter, it's sort of important to sort of open it. Okay. So we're looking at all the thousands of people that we actually send this newsletter to, and it's a small percentage that actually open it up. And it's very, we keep talking about as a family that we want to, move to action and get connected and do all, these things. Well, one way is to actually open up the newsletter, because there's a lot of things that's happening. We go over a financial innovator, somebody from the past who has laid the foundation for us to be where we are today. And it's going to be really interesting because Dr. Wright has a really cool book that she's going to talk to you guys about that actually defines exactly what I said. And we also give you some financial 101 news. So we have one of the professionals at Appeal Federal Credit Union that writes an article just for us so that we can relay this information onto you to get your money right. We also discuss different type of health topics with Black Silk Yoga. They are a comedic couple out of Atlanta, Georgia. And, they write this article for us every month concerning our health. And then we always give a HAPi update. And then we always feature at least one Black business. And so it's really important that we support. And a lot of times, when we're talking about, we're supporting, but these are like really easy and free ways to support up and coming Black businesses like HAPi. Now, if you have not seen this documentary, oh my God, you've got to see the documentary, 2 hours and 12 minutes. And so once you see the documentary, HAPi Talks will make much more sense to you. Okay, so it's, go to hapifilm.com. You can get the digital download, or you can actually, get a DVD. And when you go there to our merchandise store, there's a bunch of other stuff you can get. You can get some the other 2 DVDs that Taki Grant did, and they're full-length DVDs. So there's Nubia and the Tekken, and there's a bunch of different T-shirts. We have autographed posters, movie posters. So it's really important for you to support us, because when you support us, then we actually support the family back. Oh, Peace to Alabama's in the house. Okay. And I see Pamela and another Felicia. All right. Yes, Felicia Cole. I see you up here popping up sometime. So that's our website. Please make sure that you, support us by at least, going ahead and sign up for the newsletter. Now, if you want to, there's many ways you can show us love. You can show us Cash App love. If you're looking at us on YouTube, you can hit that super chat, and we take anything. So don't feel bad if you can't, send whatever you think you should be sending. Whatever you send, we're very happy because the support goes a long way. So there's our Cash App, which is $hapifilm. And I think that's it for now. Oh, no. The most important thing, guys, you have to share and like this video. Okay. So you have to send it to at least 3 other people. All right. Jabari Ozazi, who was also in the film. Him and his wife are very lovely people. But he's always talking about the power of 3s. So, one time he was on a panel with us and he talked about, telling the audience that they have to send it to at least 3 people because that's how the luck continues to go. So please just like and share this video. Keep the comments coming. I see you in the house, Craig from Michigan. And one of our guests is from the D like me. So that's we're going to have an interesting conversation. And so make sure that you guys just share and like this video and send it to 3 other people and make some comments. All right. And Leroy from Nashville. All right. Jay Ritten is in the house too. All right. So we're going to go ahead and get started. We're going to first bring on, and this is cool because we have some firsts like in the house, which is nice. We've been doing, I want to say we've had almost like 80 shows or something like that since COVID started. So this is really, cool that we still are bringing in fresh new people. All right, so we're going to start with our youngest guest. And now this woman is actually from the Detroit. For y'all that don't know how you don't know, but the D is for Detroit. And this is Dr. Brittany Motley. Now, the cool thing about her is that she holds several degrees. Okay. I was like reading this. I was like, oh my God, like, is this a typo? But she has a bachelor's and 2 master's degrees and a doctorate. Okay. So she's going to come on. She's going to tell us about what she's been doing, like what her dissertation was about and what she's currently doing now. So without further ado, here is Dr. Brittany Motley. How you doing?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me, Felicia. It's an honor to be here with you all.
Oh, that's what's up. All right. Now we're gonna bring in our next lovely lady, Dr. Tyrene Wright. Now, Dr. Tyrene Wright, many of you should know her. Okay, and a lot of times, like as when we're like learning about new historians and stuff like that, we bring on a lot of different historians, but we have brought on actually few women historians. So this is why you have to know Dr. Tyrene Wright. Okay. Now she is the scholar and she's the author of the book Booker T. Washington and Africa. She teaches at City University of New York and is a resident scholar for I Love Black People, which is an international Black tech company that leverages technology to address racism and xenophobia, which is like, that is so cool. So I got to ask her about that. All right, Dr. Wright, how you doing?
Yes, hi. I'm trying to, okay, so do you see me twice? Because I'm on 2 cameras over here. Oh. No? Okay, hold on 1 second.
Okay,
little
you know what?
Huh?
Okay, yeah, you can sign, if you sign onto the other camera, that's cool, and I can just bring you in.
Okay, perfect. Okay. 1 second.
All right, and while Dr. Wright is getting that together, I'm gonna bring in Miss Camille Yarbrough. Oh my, she's like the new honey of HAPi.
What?
You are the honey of HAPi because you came on. This is like your 3rd time on, yes, and everybody loves you.
Really?
Yes. Yes. I mean, oh my gosh.
Sweet. I'm very thank you. It's a privilege, an honor to be here with you because your show is so important. And I was speaking with some people yesterday about hand-me-downs. And because our families have been so attacked and fragmented, a lot of the hand-me-downs have gotten lost, the good ones. And so I was thinking of speaking about that. That's what I'm writing about now.
Oh, that's great. Oh, that's great. That's our topic. Yes. Okay, that's good. All right. So family, now let me tell you, these are very busy ladies. Okay. And Dr. Julianne Malveaux, she may be able to join us, but she is super busy. She started a brand new job. And so she may get on for a little while, or we may not see her, but we'll actually, we'll definitely bring her back. Dr. Brittany Motley is going to have to leave us pretty soon. So we're going to go ahead and just kind of get started. You guys just talk a little bit about yourselves. So let's just start with you, Brittany. Excuse me, Dr. Motley. Dr. Motley, Dr. Motley, Dr. Motley. Dr. Motley, let's start with you. Just tell us a little bit about you.
You're fine. Brittany is fine. So as you stated, I'm from Detroit, Michigan. That is where I was born and raised. Life wasn't perfect in Detroit. I grew up, poverty stricken, homeless, dealt with a lot of things. And I would say the one consistent thing in my life was education. I went to school because it was just it felt normal. It felt consistent. I didn't feel like I was having all of these problems when I was at school, when lunch would be served. And, so I had all of those things. So it kind of made me what I would say kind of the Black woman Harry Potter, and that I just went to school to kind of, escape life. And it really, really worked out for me. In school, that's where I truly, I think where my mind got liberated. I majored in pure mathematics, and that's where I was exposed to the Madhu Nater. In working with that, we learned the history of math. So we learned how the Egyptians calculated circumference of the earth, and we learned how to do arithmetic in math. And, it was very, very cool. And I attended an HBCU as well. And so that was kind of what grounded my work. But attending a school with a, kind of compromised social identity, that's what sparked my passion in the work that I do now. Going to school as a first generation student, with all of the issues that I was dealing with, I typically, I got chose for verification for my FAFSA every year. I had to start classes late. I dealt with just a lot of bureaucracy, because of my social identity. So that's what started my work that I do now in consulting and helping, colleges be more student ready. Regardless who comes in your door, you should be ready to appropriately serve them. So that is kind of my story and my work.
Wow. You know what? You said a lot of things. One of the things I appreciate you with, just in the beginning, you were like, you went to school because it liberated your mind, or you felt like your mind, you felt liberated. Like, that's what's up. Liberated spaces. Yes, yes. Okay, we're gonna come back to you. Dr. Wright, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, we talked a lot, so I'm a native New Yorker, if you can refer to oneself as such. And so similar experience in the sense that I guess went off to college, but not in New York, Tuskegee, Alabama. And I was a history major at Tuskegee, and I got my Bachelor of Science there. And then I come back to New York, and then I'm a graduate student at the City College, where I got a Master's of Arts in Modern African History. So my area of specialization is liberation struggles in Africa. Do you guys see my cat?
Yes.
Kitten. That's a kitten, not even a cat. But anyway, so quarantine kittens. But anyway, I got my Master's of Arts in History, specializing in independent struggles and the necessity of armed struggle in settler colonies in Africa. So that's my area. And then later on, I went on to get my doctorate in a PhD in interdisciplinary studies, concentration, public policy, and social issues. And so that's kind of where that work came from. It's a cross between my work as a historian and in the realm of political science and policy. So, but aside from that, I teach in the City University of New York and a couple of things aside from that. Okay. And that book, Washington, Africa, came a couple of years later after I finished the PhD program, but it is something very different than my dissertation in the sense that it critiques Booker T. Washington, and unlikely figures' role in African affairs, particularly two cases, right? The Liberian crisis and the African exclusion measure.
Okay. So now, family, I'm going to tell you now, you may want to pay attention to everything. It's just a hint, okay? Because everybody says I never give hints. I'm giving hints this time. Everybody needs to pay attention to what Dr. Wright is saying, because he has a book, and you know how HAPi does. We may just, I don't know, give some viewers free books, but they had to pay attention, because you guys have got to send us the right answers, okay? To get one of Dr. Wright's books. All right, we're gonna definitely revisit that. And yes, and I have to thank this sister on air, because we had a long conversation yesterday.
Yes, we did.
Yes, which I had dreams. And then today I sat down to try to write some questions. I was like, I was just like, I can't even think of no questions. So I appreciate
you about so much.
I definitely appreciate you staying on the phone with me. All right, listen, Nana Yarbrough. How are you doing? Yeah. Now, Miss Yarbrough has been supporting HAPi since almost the inception. And so thank you so much just for all your support. So just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I was born, we go back there, raised south side of Chicago, way back in the 30s. So I've been here. And I was very impressed by people in my community. Mama used to tell me, go out and play. But I was interested in listening to talk. But there were no black talk shows at that time, not as there are now. So I was listening to someone else's concepts and ideas and stuff. But I am a person who is my elder, my grandmother taught me. And when you go back in certain cultures, they break down what a woman is. Mainly it's a person who's been here before and who knows certain things now going on with that. But my people fascinated me. I was in love with them from the start. And I wanted to know more about them because I saw damage done, like our people. And it wasn't just our people in Chicago, it was all over the world. I wondered why. And that spirit part of me, which is in all of us, began to guide me in certain directions. I was told, and we all were told at that time, that we had no culture. Talking about. And that offended me. I mean, I was a little girl when I heard that. What is wrong? I have to find mine. You guys have hidden it. So that's when I started going to the library, and I was stopped by one of my friends criticizing me, talking about what you want to be in the library. That your neighbors are like all us. And I said, no. To me, first place. I'm not like that, and I'm certainly not that, because my mother told me what I was not that. And so it gets back to the hand-me-downs in the family, which have saved us all these years. And I think that the breakdown, if you will, the attack on the African family has caused some of those hand-me-downs, the strong ones that kept us through slavery, that we brought over here from the motherland, caused them to be lost. And so my job, I went into the arts, first as a dancer, fascinated by these rhythms, and I was raised in the Catholic Church, we didn't have all that movement and singing the way. And then when I found the African drumming and the dancing and the culture and the people from the Caribbean and African people from all over, and then when I went into the Catherine Dunham Company, the great African-focused company, dance theater company at that time, and learned much more about it. And my heart has always been to learn our people, to study our people, and to stop the damage from being done. You have to recognize it first. A lot of us do not recognize that what we're doing is not what we ordinarily would do if we had been in this experience. And so I wrote music and I wrote poetry and children's books, 4 children's books, and I have more talking about and giving the family structure, how we helped ourselves, and through music and story, but not just story for story that had roots in it, you understand? It always took me back. My first book was Cornrows. You know, how close to get to the roots than that, but that has to take you home. So that's what I do. I went to Kemet with Brother Grant. I went with the Black Studies Department at City Refuge. I went to Ghana 3 times with Dr. Jeffries and others there. But that's my heart, and that's what I do. I look at our people and see that there's something wrong, and I see that there's something so right and so beautiful that that's my heart, and that's what I do.
Okay. We know we coming back though. You said a lot of things. It's hand-me-downs, and we got to talk about that. So, Dr. Motley, who has been like your sheroes or someone that has inspired you, like just in your life thus far?
That's a great question. And building off what Elder Yarbrough just said, I think my sheroes are those who have really preserved the story, those who have done the storytelling. I don't know if you all have heard this story, but there was a daughter who was watching her mother cook, and her mother cut the entire turkey in half and then put it in the oven. And she was like, "Mom, why did you cook like that?" And she was like, "Well, my mother always cooked like that." And so she went and asked her grandma, like, "Why do you cut the turkey in half?" And she was like, "Well, because my mother always did it." So she went and asked her great grandmother, "Why do you cut this whole turkey in half?" And she said, "Well, because the oven was so small, you had to cut it in half and cook 1/2 of the turkey at a time." Now, this was no longer the context for those who were still cutting this turkey in half, right? So this is the power of, we need this story preserved so we can understand those contexts, so we can have the best possible strategy for this new world that we're living in. So my sheroes were those civil rights scholars, those who preserve the context of what's going on, you know, like Harriet Washington, who wrote Medical Apartheid, so we can understand the context of what's going on here. You know, Michelle Alexander, who wrote The New Jim Crow, so we can understand this context of Jim Crow and its influence on mass incarceration. Kimberly Crenshaw with intersectionality, you know, her and Angela Davis, who were talking about, we have a social identity, and this social identity has a relationship to power. This can be very harmful. We need to acknowledge that and talk about that. And so those were my, you know, kind of sheroes, those who told us the story, again, because our elders, their ceiling becomes our floor, but we have to have that context, you know, in order to kind of build on top of that. Again, so we aren't duplicating effort, we're not wasting our time, and we have the best possible strategy to navigate this complicated world that we're living in right now. So those are my sheroes.
And Dr. Wright, who are your sheroes? Oh, wait, you're muted. How are you muted? See, the cat, you know, the cat muted your phone. I mean,
No. Someone came in and so I wanted to get some water, but I didn't want you all to catch all the background. Hello. My sheroes, that's an interesting question. Wow. And that's so funny because I don't really even think of it like that, even though I do a great deal of work around African women and all of that, you know, the history. So growing up, that's an interesting thing. I think my sheroes were the women right in front of me. You know, I thought my mom was like everything. Not to say I don't think she is now, but that was I thought my mother had superpowers, just to be honest. You know, like, okay, this is a problem. I'm sure she's gonna work it out no matter what. You know, and like magic, when she gets home, it's gonna be fixed. So that's an interesting analogy.
Pressure.
Huh?
You know what? As a mom, that is so much pressure. Because
well, maybe it wasn't because she always did, and I think that's really just organically who We
Yeah.
are, and I think for me, uh, my mom wasn't raised. My mom is originally from Florida, and so she didn't come to New York till she was 17, like a young person just right out of high school. That being said, she was raised by a woman who, because my grandmother, African people in the United States, our migratory pattern, our migration story, our great migration story is very much like the immigrant story, right? So my grandmother left the South and came to New York and left all of her children except for the oldest in the South. And that included my mom, who was raised by a woman who knew 3 generations of our family prior to my mother, prior to my own mother. So she knew my mother, she knew my grandmother, she knew my great grandmother, and she knew my great great grandmother. Okay, so she knew 3 generations prior to my, and had only a third grade education, born right out of enslavement, but taught my mother to read and write
Wow.
by 5 and 6 years old, alphabets backwards and forwards, and all of those things that we probably were forbidden to learn just years before her birth. So I think for me, that's who my sheroes are. I mean, of course, adulthood, your parents don't have superpowers, but that was my biggest shero. I can remember even going to college and just, talking about my mother to my college boyfriend, like, yeah, she's gonna fix it. And so, I didn't really need the abstract. I was a historian. We talked history in my household. And so I
Wow.
knew about Sojourner Truth and Harriet Tubman. Those were staples because in my household, we talked about world wars at the dinner table and had conversations like that. So, but I think my everyday heroes in terms of women were the women right in front of me. They were
Yeah.
huge to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think of my Aunt Honey, and my
Yeah.
mother. You know, I was like, they between those two chicks, they could just get anything done. Just gosh, I just
Right.
like you were saying, and I was just a flashback really fast. I was thinking about one year I was trying to get money together to come back, and this is to your point, Dr. Watley. I always was trying to just get that little money together. My grandmother would play the numbers, and she's like, "Okay, go down to Western Union." Like it was always something to try to get back in school that next semester. But my Aunt Honey would always figure out some type of way to make it happen. And so,
Yeah.
Dr. Watley, I want to talk to you a little bit more about like where you are now in this type of work that you're doing, right? So how do you process your work like at the end of the day? Because essentially you are working like, well, tell us like what type of institutions you've worked with and things like specific things you've kind of done, so we can get a context. Yeah.
Yes. So I work with 4-year and 2-year institutions. So they can
Okay.
be private, public, part of systems, all types of institutions. And I'm basically helping them to eliminate equity gaps. And so that means we no longer want race, income, or gender to be predictors for success. Now, this is hard work. This is essentially asking you to be anti-racist. Higher ed was created for the white male, and now they serve a completely, diverse demographic. So we need to redesign this system essentially. So that is kind of what my work entails, is helping people become system thinkers, see the forest and
Hmm.
the trees and kind of understand the implications of that. In doing this anti-racist work, and with it being so tied to my social identity, it is very exhausting. I'm not going to try to act like it's not hard work. You have to be very intentional about your self-care. You have to be very reflective, being mindful of how am I feeling physically, emotionally in this moment?
Mm.
What is triggering me? Who is triggering
Mm.
me? So you have to have a really, I think, really good self-awareness and then learn how to, soothe yourself in those moments. So that is pretty much what I do, is I just remain aware of when am I getting a little too irritable? What is that one,
Mm.
comment that always sets me off? Okay, how do I get around this, or how do I build, boundaries and things around myself? So that is kind of how I process doing this work.
Yeah, that's you're good. But I have to tell you, like being on the other side, of it, like as a student going to, university, like we need people like you. And so do the universities usually like contact you guys, or do you like kind of do cold calling? I mean, not you personally, but like the company that you work for. Like, is this something they seek you guys out to do this work?
Yes, yes. So I
Okay.
would say something is happening, and you can judge whether it's good or bad, but we're on kind of this demographic cliff where institutions have to think about being anti-racist. It's no longer an option because the world is so diverse now. You got to figure out how to serve, all of your students. You're no longer getting kind of a predominantly white enrollment class. So it's forcing institutions into this work,
Mm.
which is good because we need the work done, but it means that they're not doing it with the mindset we would hope, if that makes sense.
Yeah. 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 It's kind of like when I make my kids apologize and they really don't want to. So
Yes,
they're just like,
exactly.
sorry. I'm like, you didn't even mean that. So I'm like, go back and think about it. Don't say it till you mean it.
Yes,
But okay. All right. So Nana,
Yes.
Yarbrough, in terms of you've been, like the our elder right now. Do you feel like there is a generational gap, or are we using the right term, or what do you think about generational gap? Let's start there.
Because our family is not what it used to be.
Okay. And you
Not
know
what
what, Nana, you kind of sound low for some reason.
Oh, shall I speak louder?
That sounds great. Go ahead.
Uh, there was a song. There was a song years ago called "Things Ain't What They Used to Be." Understand? Well, because we have come through this particular history here, the slavery, the racism, all of the horrors, we've come far, but we've lost certain things. And then the impact of media, I don't want to put anything on media, but the cultural impact that has affected us has taken its toll because the family is not what it used to be. We don't relate to one another the way we used to do. We don't have the kind of manners with one another we used to have. Elders many times are spoken of as enemy by the young people because that's how the so-called master created tension in the community. That older people were not to be respected because they knew that's where the strength was in the older people, in the wisdom. And so you break it up. You make the younger people not like the older people, the younger people. So that kind of technique of destruction was going on. As of right now, we don't communicate the way we should communicate because those divisions are still there. I wanted to say something that, as I was growing up, my heroes, my sheroes, there were many. I didn't know about them at first, but I began to study, and then they were working. Like Ida B. Wells was working for us against lynching and all of that writing. Mary McLeod Bethune was one. Then in show business, the artist Josephine Baker, who was an American who had gone to Europe, gone to France, and become a huge star, came back, and she was appearing across America. And she came to Chicago and was performing. And at that time, I kind of was thinking maybe I want to go into theater or something. And when I saw her, I didn't want her to be in the image of how they showed us in Hollywood. Either we're a maid or that kind of thing. And she was on the stage glamorous, but she began to talk about America, you're not treating Black people properly. You were doing this, you were lynching them, you were doing this and that to them. And I said, all right, that's it. That's what I want to do. I want to tell our story. So that influence was there. But after years of being in theater, being in some Broadway shows, doing some soap operas, writing the books, being an article for the New York Times, then I came to the point of writing my own. And I wondered what was happening to me because I was having certain spiritual experiences, which I did not understand. And one happened, I was doing God's Trombone to Trumpets of the Lord, Ford's Theater in Washington opening night. I'm singing, but suddenly I couldn't sing what was in the show. I was wanting to talk to the people. My body was moving in a certain way, which I couldn't control. And I'm saying, anyhow, I managed to come up the stage with everybody. But the producer came backstage and the crowd from the audience came back. They were congratulating us on a great show and all of that. But then the producer came back and he said, Camille, what were you doing up there? That's not in the show. I almost got fired and I didn't understand what had happened to me. So I went home because I'd had similar things. And I asked my mother and father to tell me of my ancestry. Tell me who are the people I come from? Your people. And they did. And in telling me that, they gave me opened a whole new door to creating communication between the elders and the young. And we right now as elders, you're not elders yet, but you have family story. Our young people need to know how they live. They need to know their value system, which brought us this far. What kept me alive was the value system that my parents gave me. Understand? And it had not been interfered by the society because it was so tight, it was so strong. It kept our families together through all of that. And here my parents gave it to me. And so now, when I write books, it is always about family communication. People are killing each other every weekend in Chicago, across this country. Our people are shooting each other. Why? There's something that has happened in our communication. They don't know who they are. If they knew who they are and their story, they knew their brilliance, and that's our job to tell them that. So one thing that my father told me was about my great-grandma Rebecca, who lived to be 115 years, partially in slavery, partially after the Civil War. But she was an activist while she was enslaved and showed the marks on her. But my father was showing me and telling me, I have a photograph. It's a bad photograph of her. But I wonder if you can.
Oh, no, we can see.
Yeah, I'm gonna make it bigger. I'm gonna make you bigger so you can hold it up.
That's Rebecca. She lived to be 115 years old.
Wow.
She worked during slavery and after slavery. People came from miles around to hear her speak because she, and one thing, they didn't believe it after we were supposed to be free because they'd been through such horror. It took them a long time to say, we are free, we are free. So when it was announced that she was going to speak, she would go, and my father would accompany her. Sometimes they would walk, sometimes they would send a buggy. Sometimes it was in a church, sometimes it was under a tree. And she would come and people would gather and watch her. They kept asking her quietly a question. The question was, did we come through? And it meant, did we outlive enslavement? Or are they coming to get us? Or did we come through? Are we free? And they would ask her that question over and over. People, enslavement had been stopped, 13th Amendment, Civil War was over, and our people still had those terrible scars. So I'm saying communicate with your children the brilliance and the strength. I mean, they say they don't like it. Oh, I like this, I don't like that. No, you don't. Be parents again. It's the parenting that brought us this far. And we say, oh, yeah, but the children, that's modern. No, if you love your children, you don't put them in the forest with the wild animals and not tell them there's some wild animals out there. No, you prepare them. This is your story. This is how strong you are. That's what great grandma would tell them too. You're strong. Our boys, because Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation, however, part of it said that people of African ancestry would now be allowed to go into the service, fight for the country. As a matter of necessity, he said. A matter of a necessity, they allowed Black men to go and fight in the Civil War. They were losing. The North was losing the war. And so again, they reached out to Black. When in trouble, go to Black. That's an old saying. And so Brother Lincoln went to the Black and said, let these Black men come and fight. And they did. And our people need to know that this country has been made in a value system brought to them and upheld by people of African ancestry. And they should be proud. They should not have to have all kinds of things on when they walk down the street. We went through it with nothing in our hands. Okay, we created ourselves. And let me tell you, it's the kind of love that we have. That's the superpower. When our people were enslaved, all we had was love for each other. Sometimes it was a beat up love. Sometimes it was kind of twisted love, but it was a love, and love has been our superpower. We don't need to put on a cape. We don't need to fly or nothing. All we have to do is be ourselves. So my hero mainly was great-grandma Rebecca, who people say you channel somebody. I don't know about the channeling. I know about ancestry. I know about DNA and all those good things. And it comes from my grandmother, great-grandmother, and on my mother's side, there was another person who helped our people get out of slavery. So that's, know who you are, know your ancestors, okay? And hold on to that which speaks to you. The African part of me speaks to me, and that is the part that I bow to and work for.
Yes, yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. Dr. Wright, you were shaking your head like me. I need for you to add on. I know you got something to say.
I'm just happy to be in the conversation, because I think that what Nana is saying is something that we don't, Nana Camille Yarbrough is saying, is something that we don't hear enough. And we have such a skewed and fractured identity that it's hard to have that conversation about going back to our core values that helped us survive, right? Because we can have a conversation like this, and I've been in conversations like this where it's like you're talking about like, hey, our values are what allowed us to survive enslavement. You know, we had some African values that insulated us, but then you find out everybody is not on the same page about African identity, or even looking at that in that way, that we brought something with us that sustained us and insulated us and carried us through, right? So I'm happy just to be in this conversation about that, because that's not a discrepancy here. I think that's exactly what has happened and what we should be doing. I have these conversations all the time about who we are, and who we are is defined by our values, right? Someone asked me one time, and the person was being a little antagonistic. He said to me, so like, what are you? Who are you? And I said, I'm African. I consider myself an African person. I'm African. And the person wanted to interrogate that. And the first thing I said is that I'm African in values and principles. And then I began to name the values and principles that in my life that exhibit that I'm an African person, because that is who we are, right? Your values, it's not something like money. You spend your money on things you value, right? That money is not a value. Typically now, if you talk to people about values, they say, oh, I value money. I want a big bank account.
Yep.
No, values are usually coming out of your culture. You have a cultural context, and values are really sort of inculcated very early in life, on usually on the foundational level, home life. But we have a fractured reality here in terms of home life. So those important or most important and sustaining values are not communicated. We had this conversation yesterday, Felicia, about primarily the value of human life. right? Our humanity, the core values. I mean, it's amazing. I have found myself in conversations with people in the recent past where humanism is not a common understanding. I'm like, wow, what is this? You know, and we're talking about Black women, other African women. You're like, wow. Well, they may not consider themselves that, but it's crazy to me because I'm saying, like, at the core of who we are, even in the context of enslavement, I think our ancestors understood that even when they lived in a society that had absolutely no value for them as human beings, literally and legally, we actually still valued each other. This is how we're able to have relationships, and these relationships in this place that dehumanized us, humanized us. And so, you know, and this is where we get into what's happening in our households. If at home, your understanding is that in this space, this is where we affirm each other's humanity and become fully human, because outside of these walls, we are not, then I think you have a very different generation, group of people, all of that being produced, you know. And so some of what we see in our community with each other is just a real violation of each other's humanity. And Dr. Bobby Wright, who wrote The Psychopathic Racial Personality, talks about why we do this. Sure, we know why we do this because we have been trained to do that in this society. We will kill each other even faster than we will go across town and kill, you know, some white person, to be quite frank. And that's simply because we have been socialized in the context of this warlike system, country, all of that, to do so. You know, we will kill the person next to us. But the reality is that part of us surviving and being victorious, and that's another conversation because we don't talk about that enough. We were victorious. Okay, yes. We are people who came out of the institution of slavery, and I like to say to my students, we defeated the institution of slavery. Our bodies were not our own upon arrival here. We took our bodies and we fought a war here. And that's something that people, I mean, I guess it might be strong language for some, but that is something that we don't understand. We don't look at ourselves as victorious people, that, you know, people who have won anything. We have won. My life is nothing like even 3 generations back in my own family. I'm not enslaved. We won the war for our bodies. Now we're in a war. We're struggling for our minds. That's why people like us are in the classroom. But the reality is that we are victorious people. And so the attitude that we have in our community about our humanity is one where we need to revisit discussing humanism, what that means, how for us we held that value at high esteem when marrying and having relations would cost us our lives. These are things we did. I'll say this and I'll stop. One of the things, and I teach US history, and one of the things my students always say once they take my course or during the course of the semester, they always say, "Oh, Professor Wright, you know, we leave your class, we're so angry." And I'm like, "No." And then they ask me, "Well, you're always smiling. Are you angry?" And and I said, "No, I'm not angry at all. And why would I be angry? Okay, I'm not angry." I said, "This is the thing. I'm giving you, yes, a version of history that you probably haven't gotten before. But that being said, I don't know a group of people in the history of humanity who had ancestors who loved them more than ours did. Period. Just to survive, just to come together and create a new and another generation and not even know how it's going to fare." Okay, I love that film. What was The Birth of the Nation that the brother did, Nate Parker did over? He had one phrase in there after they commit the first massacre on the first plantation, his own enslavers. And the other individual comes out and says, "Oh, we're all dead, or we're all dead. You know, you're all doomed because you killed those people." And he says, "No. For the first time, we are alive, and our ancestors and unborn children are rejoicing." There you go. I mean, So how could I ever be mad? I have some of the mightiest ancestors that ever walked the earth. Do you understand? And I know it. I live the benefits of it every day. Sure, we're involved in a continuous struggle, but that's still what it is. I'm not, this is not the worst situation, not considering where we have come from and not considering the fact that we have won before. We've won before. Mm-hmm. The greatest thing you can win, your freedom. Now, if we stay in America and fight, that's our business. But we don't have to do that either. You don't have to do that. You understand? Our ancestors gave us a license to the future to be whatever we want to be.
Yes, license to the future.
Yeah.
We Black women are frequently put down, let's say, by saying you're an angry Black woman. Why?
Right.
Why not? But it's what you do with the anger, You know how to use it in a very spiritual way. So it's your power also. And I look at our sisters now on the media. Some of them are just magnificent because they took in the olden days, listen, years going back, our people, they opened the door, they got us into the schools, right? They knew that if we got in the schools, if we received the education, if we let our minds grow and be free, we would be magnificent and we would probably displace them. We would probably outshine them. And so what is happening now, and I look at our sisters, our brothers who went to college, got their education, got their degrees, got their masters, but kept their soul, kept their Africanness, and they're on television right now. And those are victories. I appreciate what you said about our victories. We do not celebrate our victories. Our victories are every day. We're alive. Look at us. When I was on air with Gary Bird and people would talk about being shamed. I said, what? Who? African people being shamed. Look who we are. Like you said, Dr. Wright. And look, we've come through and look what we're doing. Look at us. We're in the whole world.
Right.
Talking about us, but talking about how great we are.
Right.
Talk about nasty things, but we got up there.
Yes. So, so I guess one of my questions is because you talked about it, and Dr. Wright, you also talked about this value system, right? And about keeping it tight, right? So how are, like, on a scale, and this is just so I can just kind of get an idea of where you guys are thinking about this. Like on a scale to 1 to 10, and 10 being it's so tight, and 0 being we have no clue. Like, where are we on that continuum, and how do we get it to where this transfer of information is tighter?
Nana?
No, I think that we have to. We do marches to Washington. We do marches to different places. We fill theaters with people coming to see artists. We have to fill theaters to come. You see plays, which are good, but we have to find ways to reach our children again. And we don't have to do that by acting like children. We have to maintain our position as adults who have experience and knowledge, but you don't beat anybody over the head with your knowledge, It's something that belongs to all of us. There's a proverb that says, not to know your family story is bad, but not to want to know it is worse. And the enemy has succeeded in making us not to want to know who we are. That's and so if we make it brilliant enough, if we make it exciting enough, in a true excitement, children, young people will come. They will be there. At the Schomburg some years ago, I was asked to come and talk to some of our children. And that was when I first began to be connected with some of my Ghanaian people here in New York. And so I came with about 3 Ghanaian carved stools. I came with the kente cloth, of course. I came with other symbols and set a stage. So when the young people came in, they looked at it. That's the second time I did that. And it quieted them. And they just, what is that? They had been told that it was voodoo. You understand? It was something ridiculous, something else. So I explained, and I let them touch them, and I let them wear the kente cloth as the Asante Hende wears it, or as the people in Ghana wears it and understand what those symbols mean, and then make them a part of the story, the greatness. Davis Wilson, Whisper Wilson does it, who I just saw Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, and there's stories in there that we're not recognizing, that we really have to examine it again. But our young people will see things and not understand it, and it's up to us to say, wait a minute, this is what that means. When I went to see Beloved, there were 3 young ladies who were sitting next to me. Wow. And at the period when, I'm getting the names, the sister who was, on the radio talk show, what's her name? Was Oprah Winfrey, yes. Yes. The character she played had lost it. She had been enslaved, she had been gang raped, she had been beaten, all of those things. Now she was the character of a real life woman who took her children out of enslavement and ran with them and was followed. And these people who slave catchers came to get her and take her back.
Right.
So she had a daughter, and then when they came to get her, she killed 2 of her children rather than let them go back into being enslaved. So in Beloved, the woman who did that kind of lost it. Then she loved a man, and when he found out what she had done, he left her. So she put all of her love, and this character came out of no place. This woman who was supposed to be her daughter, supposed to be the daughter that she had killed. And so, but she didn't understand it. And she had a little money. I remember it was very interesting, the comparison between all this Wilson's play, Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. And so when she got a little money, she ran out and she bought ribbons and beautiful things. If you remember that scene where she and her 2 daughters were just throwing the ribbons around and eating. And then she didn't have any money.
Right.
And then one of her daughters went in the community and met some women there, some church women, told them what was happening. They began to send over food, that community thing. Yep. Oprah does that, and so did what's it called, what woman who wrote it?
Toni Morrison.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, that's like a Black girl statement.
They knew what was happening. So the church women began to send food over to Oprah because they knew she was sick and she was really going. And the daughter told what was happening. So the women, this church women, came down the road to where Oprah was living. And there was an eruption because the daughter she got pregnant. And, it's a whole story about that. And Oprah saw this wagon, the white man in it, and some other people who were coming to help. And she thought that was them coming to get her children again. And she came out with a knife. Now the church women had come down the road and they started singing. Now the 3 young ladies who were sitting in the theater with me said, they just come in to start trouble. They just come in to start talking about something. And I had to stop. I didn't know what they were going to say, but I turned to them and I said, listen, singing and using the word in song in traditional Africa was a way of healing. You can bring understanding through that. And those women came to help heal this scene. And as they sang, and Oprah was coming with the knife, the woman who was supposedly her dead daughter disappeared. The problem disappeared. And the women were just singing church songs.
And laying hands on her.
Laying hands.
Yeah.
So African traditions are in our writers are putting them there for us to. If I want to go on, I don't know, because if I go on and make the comparison with Amos Wilson's Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, you'll see what I'm saying, that sometimes we cannot hurt the people who need to be hurt. And so we hurt ourselves. Mm-hmm. And in Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, the young man, I forgot what his name was, he was a trumpet player and he wrote music. And with this band, and Ma Rainey was I love that part too, because it was enhanced. But the people who were recording their music promised this young man that they would buy his music and that they would record it. That's what they told him, because it was good. It was more modern than what Ma Rainey was singing. When it came time for them to pay that young man and to record his music, the producer said, "No, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to give you $5 a piece for it." Now, what happened after that was important, because that young man told a story about how his mother had been raped and how his father had a plan to get those white men, because he had been accused of not knowing how to handle white men. So his father had a plan. He sold all their land to the white men. He moved out with his family, and he sneaked back and he killed 4 of the white men. He had a plan. Now his son, who had just been ripped off by this white producer, took his music and paid him a little bit and did not record him the way he promised. And the brother stood there being disrespected, being hurt, being ripped off, and he did not do what his father did. His father killed him. He couldn't. He turned around, went back in the studio and killed the brother. Yeah. You understand what I'm saying?
Right.
Sometimes, many times, because we cannot fight the system, we fight each other.
Right.
Cannot chastise or redirect the system, we mess with each other. And that's something we have to learn. That anger that comes out, it's really not against us. Something happened years ago. Something happened to my father when my father brought all this anger to Chicago. So it's a re-examination of the family and talk. Tell some secrets. Tell some secrets.
Yes. Yes.
We'll release a lot of stuff. But the thing is to control the stuff, you understand, that comes out. And what is it? The word cool? Cool means balance. Cool means I am in charge and I know how to respond to this situation. And we came through enslavement in many ways being cool. They thought we were being subservient and everything, but we understood exactly who these people were. And so when in our family situations, when our cousins, you find out something about their behavior, and then when you find out secrets, you say, that's why you did it. They understand. You don't have to point fingers. They understand. So praise God, we hold on to that concept of cool and telling our story. Our children, if they have never seen a person of value or recognize them, they don't know how to behave like them.
That's right.
Yeah.
They're here with us, but they don't know how.
I wanted to jump in on your commentary, Nana Camille, about Beloved, and I think that is a it's the true story of Margaret Garner. So the true story is Margaret Garner. I actually went to school in that area and never got a chance to see the actual house, but that is such a significant story in our history. And I think I love that Oprah did that, but at the same time, I think that we can see a couple of things going on with that. One, I want to make a commentary about the real story and the story that we see in the public realm and the African family, right? So the true story of Margaret Garner is one where she and her husband escape with the children and on a rare occasion cross the Ohio River. I went to school in Cincinnati as well, so I know about the Ohio River freezing over and you can walk from Kentucky into Cincinnati, Ohio. That being said, Beloved, the movie, interestingly enough, and I know people are going to say, like, what are you talking about? You love Oprah. I actually love Oprah. Okay. That being said, still, she made a little amendment in the film, or Toni Morrison. Let me think. In Toni Morrison's book, it's like this too. So I guess she's really depicting the book. in the book and in the film, Setha, who is supposed to be Margaret Garner, escapes alone.
Yes.
And her man, her partner, the father of her children, is left behind in a, psychological stupor after having seen her violated.
That's right.
By these white males on the plantation.
Mm-hmm.
And so he never makes it at all. But it's interesting how they, for some reason, they couldn't tell the story that way, that man, woman, and children escape together.
Mm-hmm.
And once again, showing just how victorious and endurable we are. Now, the true story is that, yes, they make it to Ohio. They have X number of days of freedom before the bounty hunters and all of that come for them. And she kills her youngest child. Well, the second to youngest child, right? The 2-year-old, and tries to kill the other children, is unsuccessful with that. Mm-hmm. In the true story, they actually are returned to Kentucky on a ferry. And the child she is pregnant with, when she is on that ferry back to Kentucky to her enslavers, she slips the infant she just gave birth to into the freezing Ohio River to kill that child. Mm-hmm. And, it's crazy because when this film was done, that wasn't a part of it, but that's the true story. She ends up back at the plantation, her husband and children enslaved all over again. Yes. But the book is interesting, and the film subsequently, there was, at the time that film came out, Oprah's audience, and I love Oprah, but she's not the president of African women or Black women. We got a lot of Oprahs, but she is the president of those other women. And those women, I'm talking about white Anglo-American women, they just couldn't receive the film. You understand? They could only look at the mother as a savage, as a murderer. How could she do that? And it's so amazing that Oprah never really communicated what it was, which is that, no, you all are the savages, were the savages that I was trying to keep my children from. This is the hell that I know, and that was my job, to keep them from this hell. So I think that film, for me, I usually use it also historically because it has a lot of benchmarks in there historically. Mm-hmm. The Fugitive Slave Act and all of those things that really changed the dynamic for African people who were brave enough to escape to freedom. Now it allowed people to be pursued, in above the Mason-Dixon line, and for there to be bounty and monetary compensation for that once you did escape, right? Even New York City wasn't a safe place for African people who had escaped enslavement. We had to go further north, right? If you read the story of oh my gosh, Incidents of the Life of the Slave Girl, Harriet Jacobs, right? Jacobs Free School. She makes it to New York, Brooklyn, but it's not good enough, okay? Because the Fugitive Slave Act gave the random white person the right to hunt you down and collect a fee, a bounty for it. But my point of saying all of this is that I think that film communicates a lot of important messages about our culture, about who we are, right? Setha's lesson was that she was her best thing. Once again, conjuring that whole understanding that our humanity is what it is about, right? That we are our best things, and that it's not outside of us, actually. And so I think that's a really, just the core human values communicated there are so strong that it's worth revisiting. And I think we need to revisit that conversation in our homes around what it means to be human. Okay, because for me,
that's where you go. You go right to humanity.
That's right. Because for me, to be human means to be African. They are synonymous for me. I'm going to quote one of my classmates once again. And somebody else told me I quoted the other a couple of weeks back. But I have a classmate from Tuskegee who said, there are no human beings who live outside a cultural construct or context. The first human beings are in Africa. Therefore, to be human means to be African.
It started there.
First,
that's what it is.
For the most time, right? For most of that 200 to 300,000 years on this earth, to be African means to be human. It is synonymous. And then we can work from there. But I think when we talk about ourselves in this context, what we have experienced is just a brutal encounter with a distinctively anti-human people, Europeans, and their anti-human culture. So that's always got to be reaffirmed, right? What it means to be human and what that means for us.
I wanted to, if I may, just say that I appreciate greatly what Oprah did. I don't follow people because this is this and this.
Right.
That stuff.
Right.
But when we get a chance to tell the story, we do the best we can sometimes, with limitations depending on money and other kinds of fears.
Right.
But the film, I thought, made points. They didn't do the elaborate story, but they made the point.
Mm-hmm.
The horror that women and men went through. She spoke about her brother, I think her husband, witnessing or knowing about that rape. But what could he do?
And he let him live. Right.
What I'm saying, she made certain points with that.
Right.
The writer and the filmmaker.
Yes.
And I think we have to give our film people, sometimes you can't tell the full story, but you tell the essence, you tell the soul of it. And I've heard people talk negatively about her. Hey, come on. She's done a lot of good. In this society, how are you going to make it if you don't smile at some people? You know, that is there. But within those restrictions, I think she's done an awful lot. In humanity, we have to, I think that the great creator or the creation brought us here, created our brains, our sensibility, our sensitivity, our intellect, brought all of that, gave all those gifts to us. But I have also seen our people do terrible things. And I'm talking about over in the motherland, not because of the oppression, but because all of us have some weaknesses. All of us have greed sometimes. All of us have fear sometimes.
That's right.
And so, as human beings, the things that we share, and I cannot say that they are not human. When I see us doing similar things, just as horrible. So where does humanity then start? I think we as the first people should be the models, and I think we created, coming out of Kemet and all of that ancient history, we had standards, we had values, we had guidelines.
That's right.
Which we do not, for a while, or some of us stick to them, but many of us don't.
Right.
I feel nervous when I say that we are the only ones, or we are this because we're Black. We are all of that, maybe more than other people. We've been here longer than that.
That's right.
And so just say thank you. That's all.
Nana Yarbrough, I have to okay, so I appreciate what you're saying about this. And one of the things when you were talking about Oprah, and this is definitely not a show about Oprah, but I'm just example, okay, is that so that's one line of thinking that we need to maybe take further, right? Because I do think when you are in charge of creating visuals for people, and especially for us, maybe other cultures and races of other people can withstand certain things, but I feel like as Black folks, we can't really withstand things at the same rate as others, right? But how do we communicate, or how do we how do we communicate more with elders and with young folks with pushing the ideas of how you guys thought about things to the next level? Like, do you feel like there's a disconnect in doing that? And if so, like, how can we change that? Like, what does each side need for that to happen? Because when you said that, like the hairs on my neck, neck went up. Cause you were like, well, she did the best she can. I'm like, yeah, I think we need to push a little bit further. And and so this is like an example.
Each of us pushes it as far as we can. Then the next generation takes it there and they push it further. But one person cannot. They're not going to do all that. They're not going to hit all the bases.
So how do we help? But how do elders help young folks push it forward? Or
But
do they?
I think you just have to do the best you can do. Do the best you can do. Make an inspire, and then it's like I'm looking right now, and I'm mentioning Jesse Jackson is up in age now, and he can't do what he used to do. But there was a time when he did some good stuff. Now he wasn't everything, but he did some good stuff. He did as much as he can do. You take that, then do as much as you can do. It's a relay race.
It's a relay race. Yes.
It is. And you keep handing that baton. You keep handing that baton.
You gotta unmute yourself, Dr. Wright. Because no, she's amening you.
I'm like, yes. Yes, you have to pass the baton.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's the divine order of things anyway, right? To pass the baton, right? And that's a whole nother conversation about that. But no, I think that was a leap of faith, or just Oprah assigning as to who she is anyway, right? To tell the story of Beloved. I think it's such a powerful story to begin with. So yeah, there is little things there that, historically differ from the reality. Now, my only problem with because I did a critique of of that particular film and the book. And the only reason I would critique that point here, that it's the family, is because certainly we know that our family structure, our first organization, is the key to unlocking our oppression. And so anytime one can skew the image of the Black family, it's done in the media. And so in terms of that film and the storyline in that film, the true story is that there is a full African family that escaped successfully to freedom in Ohio. But the fiction story is that there is a lone white woman who assists Setha from escaping enslavement. And I think, if we hone in on that, that's a little controversial, because that gets into the whole thing. White women, their relationship to African women, particularly African women who have been in enslavement and survived it, but who have been in enslavement, and while white women have been the enslavers, and kind of deflect, right? That, well, our men were, the enslavers. Not really, because you inherited that, and you were absolutely, full participants in the institution of enslavement completely. So that's always, they're kind of like sort of played down in terms of the institution of slavery. So to see a lone white woman as the only assistance this woman who escapes enslavement has, as the storyline, is somewhat unbelievable. And I guess it kind of placated that audience that Oprah had to a certain extent. However, the punch of it all, the gist of it all, is that the story was too powerful for her audience and even for America then and now, because really it is a commentary about the savagery of the institution of enslavement.
Yes.
Okay. And so the mother is no boogeyman. The boogeyman is that society at large and the agents and actors of it, which are white men and women and their children who would grow up to be enslavers later on. So that audience and larger America couldn't absorb that, right? Because then that makes them put the mirror up and take a look at themselves. Who are you, right? Yeah. So it's easier to say, oh, she was crazy. She killed her children, but it's not that simple. I love that film just for what it does in terms of relationships too, right? Nana Camille mentioned how Setha and Paul D are speaking about, one, her husband having witnessed, and she says he saw that, and she learns for the first time, and he lets them live. Hence some of our problems. Fast forwarding to today, right? The relationship between Black men and Black women are protector, but also victims in the same system. Also unable to protect us, their children, and themselves. And how do we deal with that? How do we process that? What does that mean in terms of manhood and womanhood? But then also too, I love the fact that in that film there's a commentary about love itself, and that's what you were talking about, Nana Camille. In that he says to her, and yes, I have this film committed to memory because one of my, I love the film, love the book, teach the film. So, but she says to him, Setha, you have 2 feet, not 4, right? About killing her child. And she's like, you think that's going to break me, that you're going to leave? He tells her love is too thick, and she lets him know thin love ain't no love at all. But you love or you don't.
There was a beautiful scene when they were making love, just about making love, and he said something about the tree
on her back, right?
Oh wow! Do you understand what that tree was, what it represented, and then for him to touch, it was a very intimate, very personal, crossing, right there.
A healing interaction.
Yeah.
And I think that's at the basis of all our interactions. What we do really need to understand is that in our spaces, and I guess we'll get to the conversation about liberated zones. In our spaces, liberated zones, what does that mean? And should that mean that those are spaces where we get to heal ourselves from it? Psychologically, emotionally, all of that, and how do we get from where we are currently? And sis, I'm not taking over, but I don't want to miss the opportunity to sneak this portion of the conversation in. But how do we get from where we are now, where our communities are also dangerous to us as well, unfortunately, to a space where our communities are actually spaces where we heal? And I'm not talking about religious ideology healing. I'm talking about actually healing through affirming each other's humanity and being good to each other, right?
That requires, again, we get back to telling truth. Because when that happens, we have to face certain things. And we have to grow, or else we go down. And we're going to grow, and we're going to look up. I have something that happened in my family. My father, shortly before he passed, told us how he had been brutalized as a child. He told my brother, he told us, but he didn't say it until he was later, in his later years. His other son heard about it and said, you shouldn't tell anybody that because it'll mess up their lives. And I'm saying, stop being afraid of the things that happen to us. What is to us, you have to handle. But just to have that, I mentioned it in a presentation that I gave, and it was men who came to me and thanked me for saying it. It's secrets that we hold inside, and we're afraid of them, which causes fear and then violence. So it goes back to that telling that family story, I believe, and doing it in such a way that people are not put down. They're simply revealed. And going back to Proverbs, because the Proverbs are very, very wise, very, very informative, and very supportive, many of them. It's always the culture you go to. Our culture, we survived through our culture. We didn't have anything else. When we were with nothing, I always said, when we came here with nothing in our hands, we had something that they couldn't see. They saw us doing things that they didn't understand. They stopped us from dancing the way we danced because they said it was violent, but it wasn't. It was storytelling. When they did this, to them it was fighting. To us, it was unity. You understand? So we have to go back to those things, and there has to be dialogue between elders and youth. And
yes,
free dialogue. Just let them say what they think, and the elders say what they think, and let's find the truth in there somewhere, because truth does it.
And you know what? I'm just gonna just take a quick little break, real fast. Just to, Dr. Malveaux is here, so I'm gonna bring her in. Yes, I'm gonna bring her in, and also everyone, please like and share this video. That's very, very important because things are heating up. Okay, things are definitely heating up. Yeah, and I want to thank Terry Griffin for giving us some Cash App love. But I want to bring in, here's Dr. Julianne Malveaux. How you doing?
Thank you. Please accept my apologies. You know, I'm on the West Coast these days. I get my time zones a little confused. Yeah. So I was in a meeting and I looked up, I said, I was supposed to be on. So anyway, I am here and I'm glad. I'm sorry to be late, but I'm happy to be with my sisters, especially Dr. Yarbrough, because I've always admired you and your work. And so this is just like a total treat. And Dr. Wright, I'm not familiar with you, but I'm loving that Kenty on your wall.
Oh, thank you. We are familiar. You remember we were on a panel together for the HAPi film.
Oh, that's right.
At Jamaica Center for the Arts.
That's right. Well, you know, I got CRS. I got a serious case of CRS. I mean, they have stuff coming at me, you know, every day. And it's I'm loving my work, but it's interesting.
Yeah,
it's interesting.
Yeah, so you know, Dr. Julianne Malveaux, real quick. So you're now a dean. Where are you at in California?
I'm in LA. I'm the founding dean of the College of Ethnic Studies at Cal State LA. College that was formed about 1.5 years ago. They've been looking for a dean since then. It's been a very up and down kind of search because, as you know, I've got Pan-African Studies, I've got Chicano Latinx Studies, and I have Asian American Studies all reporting to me. So you can imagine some of the ethnic tensions that may exist. I also have just got approval to hire a professor of American Indian Studies, which will be the beginning of starting a department of American Indian Studies, which I'm very excited about. And like I said, Provo just gave me the green light on that. So it's all very interesting. I mean, I've run a college before. I've run a whole college before, not just a subgroup. But this is still it's interesting, and I'm loving it. There are a lot of things that I plan to do, and I'm just hoping that my faculty and the others will get on board.
I love it. Get on board.
Yes. Yes. Get on board.
So we're just talking about this transfer of information from eldership to like young people, right? And we're talking about where we've started off with very strong values, but then where are we at now with that, and where's the breakdown, and how can we get that that transfer of information tighter, and
that's really good. Well, I think that Camille earlier talked about just having the conversations and listening. I think that one of the biggest challenges is that we don't listen. I mean, and I told somebody, I think about a couple hours ago, there's a difference between being old and being an elder. See, old people are old, whereas elders are taken upon themselves to impart wisdom and to basically deal with the younger generation. I mean, a lot of old people just mad because they're not young anymore. Walking around with whack values and then mad at little sisters because the little girls will fly and they can show their bellies. Anybody over 50 who shows their belly really needs a lobotomy. But so a lot of older people are just mad and they just need to get over it. We have to tell the stories of what has happened to our people.
Yes.
We have to also tell the story. I mean, one of the things that strikes me, I look at these Black Lives Matter young people, and they excite me tremendously.
Yeah.
But I often want to say to them very kindly, been there, done that, got the t-shirt. We the 60s, we did this in the 60s. We did it in the 80s. We've done it before. So, I'm very grateful to them for the ways that they've engaged. But at the same time, I really do feel like we all need to recognize each other's space, which means everybody's contribution, and all, it makes a difference. So we really have to deal with that. I want to just take a minute, if I might, Felicia, because this is a story. Somebody called me mouthy yesterday, which really made me uncomfortable. And so I had to tell them, and I tell sisters, the story of Mary Turner. And I'm sure you all are familiar with the story of Mary Turner, who was a Black woman who was lynched because she was mouthy. What had happened was Mary Turner's husband, there was a white man in Valdosta, Georgia, who got his farm worked by bailing people out of jail. And then they would cut a deal of how long they had to work. And there was always, as you might imagine, there was always a dispute between what they said and what was said. Well, he beat one man while he was sick. So the man shot him and killed him and shot his wife too. But anyway, they then in Valdosta lynched 14 people in a 2-week period. Anyone who had anything to do with the brother with the gun, anybody who had anything to do, they lynched. So Mary Turner went down to the courthouse and said somebody's going to pay, because she was 19 years old and pregnant, almost 9 months pregnant, ready to deliver. And she said, someone's going to pay for this. And she had something to say. They lynched her. She was insolent, and therefore they lynched her. And here's how they hung her from a tree, head down. So they hung her from her ankles. They lit her dress on fire. They slit her belly and stomped the fetus. When I tell this story, some people say it's too painful, but it's not too painful. It's what we need to understand is that Black women have always spoken up, often with confidence. And these are stories that we must tell. So when some person calls an assertive sister mouthy, I'm like, you gonna lynch me like y'all lynched Mary Turner? And then they get real quiet. Then you have to tell the story. But we are, we are mouthy women because we've had to be. All too often, Black men have not had the ability to be mouthy. They will be lynched immediately. I mean, so we have had to be the voices often of our community, and we need to embrace that. And this is a story that I want all Black people, but especially young women, to know about, because young sisters need to understand the source of their strength. And we do not need to have any of this gender tension. We understand that we're in this together, that everything that has happened to Black men has also happened to Black women, and vice versa. Right. The other stories that we don't talk a lot about, but a scholar shared with me, she's trying to do some work, the number of Black men who were raped during enslavement. Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, we talk about Black women being raped, but think about the Black men who were raped and what that means. There's just so much that we don't know about us, but we have to keep studying it, and we have to keep talking about it, and we have to make sure that young people value this. And I don't want to hear them tell me, well, this happened a long time ago, and it's still happening. And we know that it's still happening.
Right. Right.
Yeah. And so how, you bring up a good question in terms of, like young people. So what is it that young people need to do? you know what I'm saying? Like what is it do they need to do?
Read, for one thing. Read like crazy. I mean, and read more than the stuff that you find on here. Read more than the little tweet or whatever. I mean, read, number one. Number two, seek out your elders and ask them their stories. Listen to them. Say, well, tell me something about your past. that basically inspires you. I mean, my mom made her transition about 2 months ago. And one of the things I've talked about my mom when I talk about her a lot, about she was a social worker. She was one of the first African-Americans to teach at Ole Miss, which is kind of interesting, given what Ole Miss is. But anyway, long story short, what I often didn't talk about, and I became very emotional at her funeral mass, but I didn't talk much about her life as a postal worker. When my parents got divorced, before they got divorced, my daddy they had one of those rocky road divorces. So he didn't want to pay child support. She had been a teacher, a school teacher, 5 children, there are 5 of us. She ended up going to work at the post office because being a postal worker paid more than being a school teacher, because a school teacher was considered kind of supplemental income. So I had the charge of getting up at 4 a.m. to lock the door. So because she had the early shift. And I had fun with it. I mean, I used to make French fries at 4 a.m. and when the others got up, they're like, "Oh, are we having French fries for breakfast?" No, they get cereal over there. I had French fries. Y'all having cereal. But and I used to snoop. I would go through my mother's paperwork, so I knew more about the divorce than I was supposed to. But that's how I'm nosy. But
sisters.
One day I said to her, I was an adult by then, and I said, "Mommy, how was it? How hard was it for you to work at the post office? You were totally out of your class. I mean, this was a bushy woman, the hats and gloves and all that." And I said, "How did you do it?" She said, "It would have been harder for me to watch y'all starve." That was Black women do what we have to do, and we do. She said it wasn't her favorite thing to do, and I remember we used to have to drill her because this was pre-computers. So you had to know, like if I told you my address was whatever, you had to know what zip code it was in. Because people would always put their zip code on their envelopes. But so the postal workers had to memorize that. And we would sit up at night with her, giving her addresses, and she'd have to come back with the zip code. And we did that for months. And when she finally did pass that test, she got a raise. She did so well that she got a raise. But, like I said, I always talk about my mother used to be a professor at Ole Miss and blah, blah. But, I was reminded that I was not telling the whole story and that there might have been some class bias indeed on my part to prevent me from telling the whole story. And so now I've embraced that story and tell it. But, young people need to ask their elders, share something with me. What was the most uncomfortable thing that ever happened to you? What brought you the most joy? What makes you smile? All those kind of things. I think that when we talk to our elders about that, we get just very, very interesting story. I mean, my mentor was a woman, Dr. Phyllis Ann Wallace, who was the first Black woman to get a PhD in economics from Yale back in the late 1940s. And I was so blessed to have her as a mentor. She passed in 1993. I was so blessed to have her, but she would tell me these stories about back in the day that would crack me up. Like, first of all, Constance Baker Motley was one of her classmates, and they were buds. They could not, Connie lived in the basement of a church rather than, she was not allowed to live in the dorm. Because it was like they would let the Black students in, but then where did they live? Phyllis told me one time, she said they had 10 people in a room and one little pint of liquor. And she said, and that's all we needed. So I said, well, fast forward, I think I probably need a little more than that. But when she would tell these stories about segregation and what really, I don't know how quite to put it, but she was never bitter or angry. And I'm the original angry Black woman. And I would always say to her, so why does this stuff not make you angry? And she would say, it's just how it was. We didn't get angry. We got our work done. So she got her doctorate. And what she said is, this is how segregation benefited her. There were 3 women in her class at Yale, 2 white women and she. She said the white girls got a lot of attention from the male faculty. One of them ended up marrying a faculty member. A lot of attention from their classmates, she said they just ignored her. And she said and she was happy about that. She said she didn't experience any sexual harassment. She didn't experience anything. She said they just, this little black girl sitting there, they just didn't pay her any mind. And she said she was cool with that. She passed her exam, she did well, but she did not get the kind of attention that white women got. So, and when she was
thank goodness, right?
Exactly.
Ain't nothing wrong with that. So,
That's
yeah, it's so interesting because now you're a dean at this, at this school. What in terms of institutions have we created that kind of helps, or not kind of, but helps with this transfer of information? Or are there, institutions out there?
Well, there are. First of all, historically Black colleges and universities. As a former president of Bennett College for Women in Greensboro, North Carolina, I would just lift up our HBCUs as a place where information can be transmitted. I think that secondly, we're looking at our museums. I mean, the National Museum of African American History and Culture, just such a rich place to be. And in many cities, we also have, in San Francisco, there's an African American museum. There's one here in LA. So these museums often tell stories that perhaps our elders won't necessarily share, or will share, but then they can amplify. I think that the movement towards institutionalizing our history is extremely important. And we're seeing it happen more and more. Other kinds of institutions, I think our churches, I attend via Zoom, unfortunately, Metropolitan AME Church in DC, which was the church that Frederick Douglass attended. And so when I heard that Frederick Douglass had attended there, and Vashti came, Reverend Vashti McKenzie came to speak once, and I actually joined the day she came, because I was so moved. I'm a church sampler, but I've stayed with that church for a long time because I'm a spiritual sampler.
Did you say spiritual sampler?
You're related to my mother.
Yeah, I don't believe this is
everybody's church.
Well, I was raised Catholic, which I rejected.
Me too.
I rejected that in high school because I told my mother the priest was the oppressor. I got in trouble for that, but it was the truth. And so I've been Baptist, Methodist.
I'm going to put my thing on mute. You're saying too much that I agree with.
Yes, you don't know Dr. Malveaux. I had like a 5-hour conversation with Dr. Wright yesterday when I was just calling to tell her, I'm going to send you the Zoom. I'm going to send you the StreamYard information. This is what we're going to talk about. And then 5 hours later, I was like, okay, so I'll see you tomorrow in a couple of hours. But a lot of what you're saying and what Camille Yarbrough is saying, I'm like, oh my gosh, Dr. Wright literally said this last night.
Wow.
I was bringing up these things. And so it's so powerful for me just to be sitting here and to see that you three women are all on the same page and hadn't talked to each other ever. You've talked to each other, but you know what I'm saying? Like haven't had
we didn't have a prep call. We didn't, we didn't
do Yeah. Yeah, it's beautiful. So you know what? I just wanted to talk about, because you bring up that's I like the idea of institutionalizing our transfer of information. So, like, what advice would you give young people right now, young people facing this pandemic and like this racially charged atmosphere that we're living in?
I would tell know who you are and whose you are.
That's
Understand who you are. And then know who you are. If you're Christian, you serve a mighty God. If you're not Christian, you serve a mighty higher power. No, it ain't all about you. And so in terms of the pandemic, it has caused, Rona, I call it Rona. And I said, Rona done mess with everybody. I haven't had my foot in a heel in 2 years just about. Rona messed with everybody. But, this is probably, we're going to see other challenges like this. We're killing our planet. And as we kill our planet, in terms of the environment, we're going to see more. We're going to see, they're telling us every 10 years or so, we're going to see a plague like this. So get ready for it. Deal with your inner resources because you have them. You know, and in this racially charged environment, same thing. You know, deal with what you got. And you know, you're not gonna get lynched for being mouthy. Yeah, you will not be lynched. So you might get in a little trouble. You know, my grandmother years ago got a ticket for verbal abuse because she called a police officer a son of a bitch and a bastard. He was trying to give her a ticket, and she cussed him out so bad. I was in the car. She cussed him out. He gave her the ticket for speeding. Then he gave her a ticket for verbal abuse. So, no, I'm from a long line of intense people.
Dr. Malveaux told me this story, and I was like, "What?" I mean, it was. I was just like, "Oh my gosh!" I felt like I was on the edge with each sentence she was saying until the end. I was like, "Oh my God!" Yes. Would you guys like to add something to that? Like your advice to people facing this pandemic and.
I want to chime in on something. It's not quite that. It was something you already addressed. Mm-hmm. So, Nana Camille, you made the statement about we need to tell our stories and that we have to tell secrets, talk. Mm-hmm. Right? We keep a lot of secrets, particularly us in this culture here in the United States, right? So those of us, African people, Black people who survived enslavement, it's a very clear tradition or practice that we are very closed-mouthed about many things that actually are extremely important. And recently for me, I have had a lot of conversation around this because I guess for me, I have already decided I don't care. I'll break the mold because I find that when you talk about those things that are taboo, this is where we get instruction and prescription. Mm-hmm. And for us, we typically, like I did this on another conference thing. I was talking about some of the contradictions King had. But it's not the first time I've talked about it. I've talked about it in public at a lecture. I talked about contradictions King had in relationship to Ella Baker and how he somehow resolved his contradictions to extend himself to work with Maya Angelou just shortly before he died. Now, it would be interesting if we had that discussion and understood what that transformation was for him when he said to her, I will not work with you or any other woman, to the point where he says, come back to the United States from Ghana, from Africa. Come back. I'm ready to work with you. What kind of transformation happened for him, right? Because when we start talking about what happens with us inside our communities, that's also something we're struggling with, right? Evidently, King has some issues, and that's clear. That's well documented. He had issues around chauvinism, right? And women, Black women in leadership, women being visible in his leadership, in his Big Six, and in his leadership in general. And Maya Angelou herself writes about it. But he obviously transformed and did some kind of work in order to make that transformation. Now, because people idolize King, like, why is she talking about King? Don't talk about him. You airing our dirty laundry. You can't. No, you need to study that portion, that transformation, and stop being so close-mouthed about it. What happened? And what Ella Baker said, and what actually developed? What happened in that moment, in those moments in between him saying, I'm not working with no women. I'm sure we're for civil rights, but we're not with this, whatever you want to call it, women's rights or whatever, inside these spaces. And you're not going to be holding arms with me. It's going to be all men. You know, some people feel like one shouldn't talk about it. Cone talked about it. So I'm actually late, okay? Cone wrote the book, Malcolm and Martin. So I'm very late on this. That being said, you know, when we have contradictions in our community, we have a very big issue discussing them. And for me, I have come to the point where I don't care. My attitude is like, let me extrapolate the instruction and the prescription, because certainly we are having these same issues, same contradictions, same problems in our community right now, okay? And we cannot use what or get the benefit of the experience of our recent ancestors and not so recent ancestors, because we refuse to talk about it, because white folks are going to weaponize it. We know they're going to weaponize it, but let's do the work. Because see, if we're doing the work, we're not worried about them weaponizing. We're about to fortify ourselves. And that, it really gets on my nerves, because I'm a keeper of our people, our culture, all of that. But at the same time, I understand that we have to take the best of what we are and move it forward, right? And put it in the next. So there's no other way to do that, okay, without extracting that information. And some of us, you weigh it. What are the benefits to having these discussions? And, versus what are the negatives of white folks or whoever weaponizing our struggle? My thing is this. We can absorb that. Go ahead, weaponize it. And while we do the work, by the time you get to doing whatever you're doing, we're already 10 steps ahead, because we have done the work within in terms of facilitating how to transform or have transformative conversations and exchanges within our community. I know so many brothers who struggle with a lot of things around women, relationships, all these things, but these are very taboo issues. And let me say that again, men and women. Yes. But I think the prescription for men is a lot, Black women, we are not allowed to talk about what Black men do in the public realm, because they're going to say, well, you were doing this or that to this brother, so we can't have those conversations. We can't have this conversation. Listen, has anybody noticed we're not here alone? They looking over our shoulder all the time. Now, what are we going to do? Right. And so I think we miss a very important opportunity when having elders, wise people accessible to us to get those stories, to talk about how did you transform? How did you deal with this critical issue? Okay. Because these things are still plaguing us. Really. I mean, like, if you're in a virtual space, you see the firestorm going on between Black men and women all the time. It's very cantankerous and it's horrible. But we don't have instruction, because we're too fragile to talk about the stuff that's going to give instruction and prescription. Yeah. So that's all I wanted to say.
That was a lot. No, you're right. Nothing in the dark. It's so funny. My thesis film, when I went to film school, was called January 30th, but the tagline was "The silence is killing us," and I just talked about the silence that we are just in terms of Black women not having this full conversation about health, and what just sharing, like when something's going wrong, and we're like, oh, if Miss Brown would have shared what was going on, maybe we would have known this. And now when we're looking for Miss Brown, she's not dead and gone, and so just this conversation about like just that's one piece of it, is health. So yeah, silence is not it's not a killer. Yeah.
We don't talk to our children, we don't talk to our baby girls about a number of things. Breast health is one of those. I mean, literally, the number of sisters who will not get mammograms is frightening. And there's information. A friend of mine just started an organization called Touch. It's for women who survive triple negative breast cancer, which is far more aggressive for Black women than for any other women. We get it sooner, and it's extremely aggressive. She's a survivor, but she in order to survive, she let go a lot of stress. She calls her former husband her husband, because he was her husband. But just let that one go. But this stuff runs in families, and if moms aren't willing to talk about their daughters, you're basically setting us up. And Black girls, young Black women, Ricky has seen young women as young as like 26.
Wow.
With breast cancer, which you usually associate with middle-aged women.
Dr. Malveaux, like I had breast cancer, and I remember I would have conversations like and I talk about it all the time. Talk about, like, if somebody's telling me something, I'm like, here to watch my film, or I'm telling them, because if like I didn't know anything. You know, my mothers were alive, so I was like, well, they probably didn't have it. But then after I started like digging and finding out some history, it wasn't like they you know, they had never had cancer, but a great grandmother down the line had, you know, and so it's just like you said, this transfer of information, you know, and knowing like how to navigate this whole healthcare system, you know, when you're a Black woman, and what things to say, you know. And so it's so funny that you say that, because I remember when I showed my film, I had we had like a mammogram mobile there, and we had to do like little these like little sketches with people, because a lot of Black women were afraid of the mammogram, and I was just like, yeah, but chemotherapy is actually a little bit worse.
Just a little bit, huh?
Like we had to, you know, those are like, you know, types of things.
Let me tell you something. Not to stir up the gender conflict, but if men had to put their penises in the same thing that we have to put our breasts in to do breast cancer, they wouldn't get checked either. And so we need some women to figure out a way to look at those breasts without them having to be mashed and scoped into that machine. It's very uncomfortable. I mean, I get my mammogram, but it's uncomfortable.
Yes, and the thing about those mammograms is they're not the best way. I had a mammogram and they didn't pick it up, so that's a whole another conversation we have to have. Like the mammogram is not the best way.
It depends on the mammogram, because if you get the one where you're laying down in the table and your boobs are basically go through a little hole. Anyway, I've had a couple of scares, so I've had several different kinds of mammograms. So that first one, you know, is okay. I think they call it systolic. I don't know what they call it. But anyway, it's supposed to be more thorough than the first one.
And the first one where they just clamp it down. Like all these words, even the words that we're using to describe this, I could see how somebody might not want to do it. But just, you know, a little thing out there, PSA for you women, please just get your breasts checked. You be checking them every month.
And be aggressive. See, the other thing is be aggressive, because when I got the first mammogram and they said there was a problem, I said, well, so can we do something about that? And they told me, well, we'll check you back in 6 months. I'm like, no. You will check me tomorrow. I said, I will sit here, sleep here if I have to, because you're not sending me home telling me there's something going on and I don't know what it is. So they finally agreed to let me have one 2 days later. But because the woman was like, she said, you seriously consider sleeping there? I said, yeah. I said, I took a shower this morning. I ain't that funky. I said, sit right here.
See, that's good. You have to, you know, it's just like when they told me I had like stage 0 or 1, and they were like, oh, well, you can wait a year. Who waiting a year? Like, oh, exactly. Like, who's doing all of that? Oh, no, we about to get this. We about to get this done right now. Like, you know, and so, yeah.
But see, this is the conversation.
I'm not trying to take your job, but Tyrene and I have been running our mouths, and one of the main reasons I wanted to be here was to hear from Camille, from Nana Camille. So we sit here running our mouths, and she's sitting there very quietly and patiently. And I know she has far more wisdom too, certainly more than me, and probably more than Sister Girl here too. So Sister Camille, would you please indulge me?
I'm so grateful for you. You don't know. Thank you for all of the. It's a joy and an honor to be here with you, sisters, because you all have that spirit, that old spirit. And, you know, you can say, ain't gonna let nobody turn me around, and you all have that spirit in you, and you're gonna go up and better. I was thinking a couple of things. I think we need to get back to identifying humanity, because we criticize ourselves for things that we shouldn't, because it's not part of us. It's not, or we expect things which are not part of our humanity, but we never define what it is. Where does it? Francis Cress Welsing would come in frequently at the First World Alliance here in New York. It was a lecture series that went on for 30 some odd years. Sister Kepa, a woman, started it, her husband, but it was Sister Kepa who started that. And we would come and people, we accuse each other of things which should not be expected of us if we're just being what we call normal or natural. I said earlier that love is a natural superpower, and we have reduced it to a blues phrase, just something my baby done left me. But when we had nothing, still had that thing about loving each other. And sometimes because of our conditions, we mistreated each other, but it was still love, I wrote a song called Take Your Praise, and I dedicated it to Black men. But people have taken the song and said, no, we weren't going to sing all those lyrics. We just sing the praise you part, but we won't say the song about how you helped me through life and how I helped. But I'm getting away from the point. The point is, what does humanity mean? What are the characteristics of a human being? And how do you know that you're doing something that is wrong if you don't know what you as a human being should and could be doing? What is a human being? What's the definition? Is there Google can tell you maybe what a human being is, because it restricts us. We're many things in that framework of being a human being, but we have to be able to analyze it so that when we do things, sometimes people murder people in terrible ways and they say, oh, that's inhuman. No, it's not inhuman. We do. Sometimes people, my mother loved my father unconditionally. I mean, it was just crazy. But I mean, it wasn't a sexual thing. This was my husband, this was my family, and they're my world. And with all the conflicts that she went through, she still held on to that love. And I'm saying, well, was it because of that age she came through and women were supposed to be subservient? Is that what it was that she was living? Or what was it? So let's define what humanity is. Now, there's another thing happening now, and I'm bringing it up because people came and they've been it was like they were trying to start a witch hunt about gay people. Okay. It's not human to be gay. Is it human to be gay? Where does that come in? And I know people are mad at me. I was almost attacked once because I wouldn't go along with what they were saying. You hear that? You hear noise?
Yes.
It's like we're being terrorized by motorcycles.
Yes, in Harlem.
It goes on every time. But what I'm saying is that there are many parts of being human that we do not recognize, do not respect, do not accept, and use as attack weapons. So, and here we are having survived enslavement when we were victims of the most monstrous, excuse me, I'm upset now, I have to cool myself out. Behavior, misbehavior, torture, everything that people could think of that was evil was done to us. And yet, sometimes now we say, well, let's do this to that person because they are this or they are not. What is human? What is a human being? What behavior does not come in under that category of being a human being? And when you act like you're not a human being, what do we do to you? Who makes that decision? And what makes you the person who's going to do it? Or what makes you the person that's going to be done to? So don't come to me and accuse me of this or that. I'm just saying I'm living life and I'm watching our behavior. I'm watching us. And I do want the best for us. And if we turn on each other for every little thing that's not like me, the person doesn't preach like me. They don't do this like me. So something must be wrong with them. Stop it. A lot of that comes out of enslavement, but a lot of it was brought over here by Africans in Africa who had their human problems. So that's my whole thing today was just let's define humanity and then try to live to the best of it. Exactly of it. And I'm gonna go back to some films too. We would, Dr. Wright, because I like your way of thinking about films, and my way of thinking about it's very interesting. And Julianne Motley, I've been a fan of yours for a long time.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you for being in this struggle and for doing what you have done. Stood up. It's just been a heroine. And I don't mean heroin, the kind of stuff, heroine.
Well, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
Heroin. That's funny. Oh gosh. It's
roll it. Heroin.
oh, I can't roll it.
Okay.
Sorry. I can't rock it, never roll it.
South Africans stopped the South African Black people from rolling in their language, because they would say things and roll it, and they say, you can't do that. Stop. What are they afraid of? What part of their humanity told them to tell the Black people they cannot roll like that when they're speaking?
You know, what you said, Donna Camille, reminds me of something Dr. Angelou said to me once years ago. She was, of course, on my board at Bennett, but had been a friend from the 80s. I think I frustrated her a little bit, but what she said to some of my students was, anything that was human, within the human experience, Black people could do. Mm-hmm. And she was responding to essentially a young lady who got up and all this neck rolling and carrying on, talking about why did she have to take math? She didn't want to take math. Math was hard. Math was difficult for Black people. Maya broke it down. She said Black people invented math, number one, but anything that any human being can do, any other human being can do. And that's the good as well as the bad. Mm-hmm. You know, so we say murder is inhuman. No, it isn't. Mm-hmm. People have been murdering since Cain murdered Abel. Mm-hmm. You know, I mean, people have been murdering. Mm-hmm. So it reminded me of her, and you know, just made me think of her very fondly. And again, to count my blessings that I had her as a mentor type.
Mm-hmm.
And mentorship is important.
Yeah,
Well, you know, ladies, I just have one more question. It's just a closing question. And we'll start with Dr. Wright, and then you, Dr. Malveaux, and then close it with Nana Yarbrough. But what advice, okay, would you give, like, you know, living at, you know, at whatever time you are right now in this, you know, time and space, what advice would you give to someone younger that you wish that you might have gotten, you know, as a young person that you know now because you are in your body right now? Does that make sense?
Yeah, kind of.
Oh God, I love you. All right, Dr. Wright, we'll start with you. You have to unmute your microphone. Oh, why is it unmuted?
Okay, I'm unmuted. That's an interesting question. I probably told you the answer to that last night. But I think it's just the simple, well, just two things that I said earlier, which is one, you know, I think perspective is everything, right? And so I don't look at, you know, I've started using language that is reflective of my own consciousness and hoping and encouraging, particularly my students and people that I influence. So I teach here in the US, but I teach internationally through I Love Black People. So I teach, you know, every month at least 500 to 700 people internationally, ideological course on Pan-Africanism. But what I consistently say is, one, it touches on what Nana Camille said, that everywhere we go, you have the right to have your humanity respected. Okay. And I've had some occasions where I've definitely had to tell students that. It's like, listen, I hear all the little issues you're going through here at this institution. Everywhere you go, without exception, you demand the respect of the human being that you are, you know. So that for me is like the biggest issue. And then also too, just kind of not even flip the script, but just look at our story from a different angle. I just certainly see how victorious we are. We're people who defeated the institution of slavery. Can you imagine these folks were getting stuff for free, and we put an end to that.
Yes,
we start talking about Frederick Douglass, Frederick Douglass was in the ear of Lincoln and said, "You are either a coward or a fool not to let this 500,000 people fight for their freedom." But come on, Robert Small, right? Who makes it to the other side and provokes the Contraband Act. Nobody gave it to us. We took it. We were not a part of the American agenda. That was not part of the agenda for the Civil War or anything like that. We saw an opportunity. We took and fought for our freedom. We defeated a 250-year institution called enslavement here. And you're talking about people who do everything for material, okay, and capital. And we brought that system where they got super profits to an end. Can you imagine that? There's many things we're battling now that are far smaller, but seem large. But when we remember that we are, I went into a gas station before, and the guy, he was being facetious, and he asked me what I was, and I told him, I said, yeah, he said, well, what are you? And I'm like, really? I said, so I'm an African person. You know, the Africans who ended the institution of slavery here, that's the kind of African I am. So that's and when I came in again, he reminded me, oh yeah, you're the Africans who ended slavery in America. That's right. I'm glad you remember. Don't ever forget it.
There you go.
There it is. There it is. I like that. Dr. Malveaux?
Well, what I wish someone had told me is to be gentle with myself. I talked a little bit about my mom. She was very exacting person. A- was not good enough. If you want to know if you got a 97, what happened to the other 3 points? And so I have tended to treat myself with that same level of harshness to, as accomplished as I appear to be. I'm often like, well, you got to do more. You got to do better. So I would just tell you, first of all, just be gentle with yourself. You're going to make mistakes. Allow for the fact that you're going to make mistakes. Because the only perfect being who walked this earth was the good Lord, Jesus Christ. The only perfect being. So to hold yourself up to an exacting standard is fine, but it's also important to just be gentle with yourself. You can't love anyone else until you love yourself. I mean, that you have to basically know who, as I said earlier, who you are and whose you are. But you have to be madly in love with yourself, flaws and all. I mean, and we all have flaws, and that's a good thing. That's a blessing. But we still have to be very self-accepting, because I find that when people are not self-accepting, they can't accept others. And you have to be able and willing to look at, as Donna Camille has talked about humanity. Well, part of being human is making mistakes. And so I just wish that my mom had said something like that to me. She always like, okay, Julianne, that's good. Now what's next? And in many ways it was good. It fueled my ambition. It fueled a number of things. But I find that I have often been very cruel to myself. Get up in the morning and say, you mean you didn't do that? You could have done that. You should have done that. Blah, blah, blah. And just saying this to myself, and it's just really not helpful. Get up. I used to, I had a couple of losses this year. My mom in June, but last year, literally a year ago, actually, my significant other passed. And we used to talk every morning, and he would say, "Good morning, sunshine." And I'm like, what are you sunshining about? He's like, it's a new day. Look outside. I mean, he had such an unfailingly positive attitude. And I wish that I had more of that in me. I was blessed to have had him in my life, but I wish I had more of that just unfailingly positive attitude. Now, in the face of all this racism and ignorance, it's hard to be unfailingly positive. But even when, he had challenges at work, I guess he told me I could pick a fight with a telephone pole. He could make a friend out of a telephone pole. I mean, that was the difference between the two of them. I mean, he could make a friend out of anybody. I mean, he might have cussed you out 5 minutes ago. Well, he didn't cuss. But How we stay together? That's another question. But I mean, he might tell you off today and tomorrow, yo man, let's go get a cup of coffee. Literally. I mean, he just didn't hold stuff. And I wish I had more of that in me. So I would just do a thorough, frequent self-evaluation and know who, like I said, who you are, whose you are. Know what your buttons are that get pushed, and then hide them. Don't let other people push your buttons. You know that certain things gets on your nerves. Well, does everybody else have to know that? In some cases, yes. But in many cases, not really. Because at the end of the day, what's it all about? And if we're all about the liberation of Black people, then we have to really be basically very kind to each other. Extremely kind to each other.
That's all. Yeah, that's really good. Oh my gosh. And before I get to you, Nana, one quick thing. Hey guys, because I almost forgot about this as Dr. Wright was talking. So listen, you guys, whoever, let me put it up right now. The first 5 people that can put down in the whole university, not no initials or anything like that, but who emails me, the first 5 people who emails info.hapifilm at gmail.com with where Dr. Tyrene Wright went to school, the first university she went to. First 5 people, you get a copy of her book, which is excellent. You know what, Dr. Malveaux, I'm also reading your book too. I just want to let you know that. Yeah, but yes, the first 5 people, info.hapifilm.com. info.hapifilm at gmail.com. And maybe Dr. Wright will initial it for us. Autograph it for the 5 people. Okay, great. All right, so first 5 people, where she went to get her bachelor's at, right there, email us. All right. Miss Nana.
That's such a giveaway.
Okay. I know. No, because but you know what's, let me tell you what's interesting about this. So this show is 7:30 Eastern Standard Time. So somebody who's going to watch this 3 days from now is going to email me. It's so funny. People watch the show like a week. It's like, and they'll send this email like with the answer. And I'm like, wow, do they think they're the 5th person? But anyway, Nana Yarbrough. What would you like to add?
Yeah, something that I've learned over there is don't be afraid of fear. Don't be afraid of fear. Analyze it, find out why, and then handle it. But don't be afraid, because fear stops a lot, and fear causes violence. Fear causes distrust. So don't be find out why you're afraid of this thing. Analyze it and then handle it, whatever it is. That's it. We all have fear. We're all afraid of stuff.
Yeah. Wow. This has been so great. It's nice. It's nice sitting on this panel with you guys and just being in your presence. You guys are so powerful. I love it. I love it. I love it. I'm going to close out the show, but I just really want to thank you guys I'm always like, thank you guys for saying yes. I really Taki and I, we're always happy when someone says yes, when we ask them to be on Happy Talks. So thank you so much. We need to have individual shows with everyone, to just talk more. And I really want to hear more about your you in this new position now, Dr. Malveaux. I think that is so awesome. You are an upward mobile woman. That's what I said when I talked to you on the phone today. I love it. And the interesting thing, and I will say it again, is that the things that you and Nana Yarbrough said, we were, talking about all of these things last night. So it gives me hope, that we are having a really good transfer of information, that we will, continue to do that, because you guys are right on the money. Right on the money. And Miss Yarbrough, you giving me that. That's the peace sign. Isn't that the peace sign? That's the peace sign.
Well,
he's blessing us.
Oh, you're blessing us. Oh, that's even better. Oh, thank you, Miss.
I'm sorry.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Yeah. So if you guys have any final words, if not, we're done for now. Unless you have final words, feel free.
No, just thank you for bringing us together. Again, I apologize for being late, but as I said, I've been following, just enjoying Camille Yarbrough as long as I can remember. And so when you told me who's going to be on the panel, I'm like, yes, I could just about kick myself but I did say to be gentle with myself, so I'm not going to kick myself.
No, no, and we always can bring you guys back. That's the other piece.
Plus, I'm not limber enough to kick myself.
Okay.
But anyway, this has been a delight and a treat. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes. Yes. Thank you, Nana. Thank you. Oh, I wish you guys were in person. We just give nice hugs. I tell you, I love you guys. Yes. All right.
This is not.
I will definitely see you guys again, and we will all three be in touch. Okay?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Can I flash my T-shirt?
Yes.
So I didn't want to dress up today. I wear this for my international class, and it's a brother. Can you see it?
Africa. Yeah.
It is the
Wait, I'm gonna
future.
Oh, okay.
Future.
Africa is the future.
Absolutely. Can you see?
Yeah.
I don't want to ruin everything with this. But anyway, I just want to, because I want to not just promote, but just say that, that's truly what I believe. Africa is the future. And so I wanted to flash my T-shirt because I wasn't I wasn't conforming to any, certain attire for the sit down, but I wore that for a reason.
Oh, that's what's up. Yeah. Okay. I think that's the Brooklyn in you.
Evidently.
Africa is the future, but we've got to protect it. We have got to work as hard on protecting Africa as we do on protecting ourselves here. There is going to be a mineral run. Let me stop. But then, we have minerals on the African continent that exist nowhere else. That's right. As we see what's going on in the world, that the colonizers are going to try to do whatever the devil does. Right. We have to, but too many of our people, unfortunately, don't look at Africa through a policy lens. If we don't look at it, then basically we're letting Europeans, colonizers, etc., have their way with our continent.
That's right.
Include China in there.
Absolutely.
Oh yeah. Don't get me started on that subject.
Right, but the consistent fact: youngest population on Earth right now. Most 30 and under, that 1.6 billion. Concentration of the world's resources. Yes, it's on the equator, but the concentration is in the Congo and the 9 surrounding countries. Fastest growing entrepreneurship markets in the world. So listen, while everybody else is hitching their cart to Africa, we need to remember what's primary for us. It's the source of our power. It's the source of our liberation. Yes. So
absolutely.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Yeah, you have to email me where you, or the website where your T-shirt is. Where you.
Oh, it's not my T-shirt. It's another brother. His name is Dines Amir, and you'll see him. He does a whole thing. He's settling, expatriating people to the continent, but he's based in Atlanta. He has a whole program and YouTube channel and everything called Chasing Uhuru.
Oh,
so that's his shirt. Yeah, and I support. But the organization I work for outside the university is called I Love Black People, and so most of the students or most of the ambassadors in that organization are on the African continent, and they are working to help leverage technology to address racism and xenophobia. So yeah, they love when I wear this shirt. I wear it out.
I love it.
Okay.
Powerful color.
All right. So thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Right.
Thank you, Nana.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you. I love your Sankofa earrings.
Oh, okay.
You know the symbol.
No, that's Ghana. the Santa Henry. That's where I first saw it. And I saw it.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so Ashanti Henry.
Derby, not Derby.
Derby.
Bye.
Okay. All right.
All right, y'all. Peace out.
Peace out. I love it. All right, guys. That was another beautiful show. I tell you, those women are beautiful, beautiful, powerful, filled with so much information, and we're definitely going to bring them back. Bring them back. We have to have more extensive conversations. I feel like we just kind of just wipe the top of the canister. You know, we gotta open that canister and get into it. So, you know, if you guys didn't know, please make sure you like and share this video. But if you didn't know, HAPi is going to Egypt in February 18th to the 28th. So February 18th to the 28th, 2022. Please, if you can make it happen, you know, get your ticket. We are having the first annual, or is this a groundbreaking convention there, well, conference, and it's called One Africa Returning to the Source. And on that panel, we have a host of elders and scholars that will be, you know, conducting this one-day conference. We have Dr. Leonard and Rosalind Jeffries, Anthony Browder, Professor Small, Dr. Solange Ashby, Asar Imhotep, and Dr. Wade Nobles will all be in attendance there. So I am going to show you guys a brief little promo and come back and close the show.
Want to travel to Egypt with HAPi? Since 1999, ACAD Tours has featured some of the most culturally dynamic tours to Egypt. Taki Grant, the director of the award-winning documentary film HAPi, is also the CEO and founder of ACAD Tours. As part of our 23rd anniversary trip to the Nile, ACAD Tours is hosting an extraordinary first-of-its-kind tour that includes nightlife on the Nile. This expedition is geared towards the savvy traveler seeking an intellectually stimulating experience and a good time. Visitors will check into a hand-picked chartered luxury cruise exclusively for our group. By day, we will visit the pyramids, and at night, we will party under the cosmos as we sail up the Nile. Come experience historical landmarks that have stood the test of time. For more information, please visit our website at www.acadtours.com. You can also email us at acadtours@gmail.com.
Yes, family. So if you can go to ACAD Tours and get, you know, it's $300 to reserve your spot. It is going to be a fabulous trip. We're gonna learn a lot, and we're gonna have a lot of fun. Also, I just wanted to put up the payment information for Dr. Our beloved ancestor now, Dr. Runoko Rashidi. If you want to support his legacy, please, this is the only way, is through his sister Carol Strong. That's the information right there. So any donation that you give goes straight to his family and to building his legacy. Also, I can't, you know, I was so enthralled with our conversation, I forgot to show you the website for Dr. Wright, for Dr. Wright's book. So I see that some of you guys have already submitted your information. So far, everybody's right, but this is the book. So even if you are not one of the 5 chosen people, you can just go to Booker T. Washington and Africa.com. This book looks fabulous. I'm giving to order me a copy too. Usually I try to, you know, get the book before someone comes on, so I can, you know, actually like look at it and read it. But I didn't have a chance. I didn't have the opportunity this time. So please, you know, we were going to all read it together. Booker T. Washington and Africa.com. That is where you get that Dr. Tyrene Wright's book. And also make sure that you are subscribed to all of our channels, our YouTube channel, our Facebook and Twitter and Instagram at HapiFilm. Send this information to 3 other people so that we can get the word out. It's shows like this that that we need to make sure that the family is, you know, hearing this dialogue so that we can continue. And thank you, pseudo charlatans. I tell you, that's my buddy right there. I love his emoji that he's always putting up on every single post. So thank you, pseudo charlatans. I will take your comment. Thank you very much. Drastic, hello, and Carlin. I seem like this is the first time I saw you, but thank you for chiming in. Superman. All right. Shirley Dixon, Reef. I want to thank you guys all for coming and tuning in to HAPi Talks. It's, we can't do our jobs unless you guys are supporting us. So I thank you truly from the bottom of my heart for just, showing up and showing out every HAPi Talks. And right there, guys, make sure you go onto the website. If you're not getting our newsletter, we did a beautiful visual offering of Dr. Runoko Rashidi's life that we sent out to our news, our newsletter recipients. So that's why it's important, because sometimes, we send out, emails about like who's coming on HAPi Talks and things like that. But sometimes we send out other things that we really, want the family to have. So please make sure you go to hapifilm.com and go ahead and sign up for the newsletter, pick up a DVD. You can donate to our GoFundMe, everything at hapifilm.com. And which brings me to my last point. Next week on Thursday, August the 26th, we are sitting down with Chester Higgins and Professor James Small, and we're going to have a really good conversation. Chester Higgins, actually both men are in HAPi, the documentary. So that's pretty cool. But Chester Higgins has a brand new book out called Sacred Nile. It looks fabulous. So please make sure you guys tune in next Thursday with Chester Higgins and Professor James Small. So I just want to say peace to everyone in the chat and those that are watching, at home. And remember to like and share this video. Thank you so much. Peace and blessings.
I don't know what we can talk about in this nation without talking about white superiority, honestly.
Who defines the meaning of God also defines the relationship between economy and God.
African Americans spent $1.3 trillion last year, making us the 16th wealthiest nation in the world. Why have we not turned those riches into wealth to develop our community?